In this example problem, we have a survey of 500 individuals that were asked about a few qualities of their life: their home ownership, their car ownership, how much they spend on food annually, and how much they spend on travel annually. We're asked to use some summary measures to summarize this information that we are given so we can figure out how much does an average person spend on food and travel, and is that influence whether they own a home or not. So we can go down and we can filter through all of these different things. There is one very important thing about this data set though. If we scroll down, I'm going to go down to, I think it's line 129. You see here and here we have blank points. That's not a issue of an incomplete file in so much as that when you survey things, sometimes people just simply won't respond, and there's no real way to determine if somebody owns a home or a car respectively if they don't input it into the survey. So what are we going to do? Do we throw those out? That's perfectly one option. Is there some kind of way to impute this based upon the other numbers they have? You can do that as well, but for the purpose of this example, we're just going to keep them in the sample, just incomplete information that we have, because if we check by home ownership, something that's blank would be considered a no. Same thing with car ownership. So that being said, let's go back to the problems at the top that we're tasked to find out. The first one is, what is the average amount these 500 people responded spent on food during a period? Well, we can figure that out with the average function. So I'm going to go to average, and I'm going to hit go and bring that in. And we want the average of all food expenditures for the 500 people in the sample. So I can hit Control, Shift, and down, making sure that I have everything in there, and I do. It's all the way from D2 to D501. That's 500 spaces. I hit OK, and it comes out to $4,420 and some change. So the average person in this sample spent a little over $4,400 annually on food. What about on travel? Let's do the same thing again. And if you wish, like I'm going to here, you can always type it in, equals average, open a parenthesis, and we want, in this case, how much was spent on travel. So I'm going to click cell E2, then Control Shift down. And now I'm not all the way to the bottom. I have a blank someplace in here that's stopping that technique from working. But what I can do is just continue to hold Control Shift and hit down one more time, and it keeps going down. And I want to go until I'm at line 501, which is the bottom, and there I'm good. So even though I had some blanks, I now have the whole entire sample set. Close that parenthesis and hit enter, and it determines right here that the mean, arithmetic mean average spent on travel for the people in this 500 person survey is a little over $2,400. Well, is this affected by their home ownership? And this is for food and travel. So let's find what the mean amount spent on food is by homeowners and homeowners only. Now I have like a delineator. I have one point in the information where I want the average of only people that meet that criteria. In this case, people that said yes to home ownership. Well, to figure that out, I can use the average if function. So average if is what you want to type in. You hit go, and it's the first return. There is if and ifs. Ifs has multiple things that you're checking for. We only have one. Do they own a home or not? So I want the singular average if, and I'm going to hit OK. It returns to us three different things: the range, the criteria, and the average range. The range is the input that you are trying to separate by. We're trying to figure out here if they're homeowners or non-homeowners. So I want everybody in the own home information. So I'm going to start with cell B2. And I'm going to try filling in that range all the way down to the bottom, which is line 501 we've already seen. And I hit Control Shift and down, and I see that it stops at 129 because somebody left a blank. I don't want to keep going, so I hit down again. Got another blank that's stopping me at 131. I hit down again. There's another blank, 166. But I'm just going to keep hitting down until I'm all the way through to line 501. And now I have it. What is my criteria? Scrolling back up to the top really fast, we're looking for the amount spent by homeowners. So I want people that said yes to own home. So for the criteria, in quotations, I'm going to type in yes. And now it'll return just the average, in this case, of people that said yes to whether they owned a home or not. But what am I trying to find the average of? I'm trying to find the average of how much they spent on food. So the average range is the return that you're trying to find the average of. I want the average for food. So I'm going to click on the first input that we have in the food column, cell D2. I'm going to hit down, and that goes all the way to 501, so I have it all in there. And now I hit OK. And by filtering out only homeowners, I find out that the average homeowner spends $4,048.90 on food. What about for non-homeowners? I'm going to use the same concept. I'm going to once again use the average if function, which is already highlighted. Hit OK. The range I still want is the entirety of column B over here, so I'm going to click in B2, Control Shift, and I'm just going to keep on rifling down until I'm all the way to 501. And just for point of emphasis here, if you go too far, you're going to go down to some crazy number all the way at the bottom that you don't want to go that far with all those blank things. Just hit up and it brings you back to B501, the last line that you actually have information for. So now we have the correct range. For criteria, I want non-homeowners who would reply no to the question whether they owned a home or not. So in quotation marks, I'm going to say no. And then I'm trying to find the average of how much they spent on food. So I want all the information in the food column. I'm going to click on the first return in cell D2, Control Shift down, goes all the way to 501, so I have everything in there, and I hit OK. So what can we conclude from looking at this information right here? If we're a grocery store in a certain area, we could use this to help predict how much each person is going to spend based upon whether people in that place own, or they rent, or they live with somebody else, whether they're a homeowner or not. And while the average is $4,420 for the amount spent on food, we see right here that people that are non-homeowners spend significantly more on food per month than homeowners. What's the reason for that? Your mortgage. A mortgage is expensive. Obviously, if you're going to pay for an expensive expenditure like your monthly mortgage, you're not going to have as much money left over. So people that own a home tend to spend less on food. What about on travel for homeowners and non-homeowners? Let's do the same concept down here. We're going to do the average if function one more time. Hit go. This time we are looking for whether they are a homeowner or not, so we're still going to use column B's information. Control Shift down until I'm all the way down to B501. Filtering through all the blanks. Now our criteria is checking for home ownership, so I'm going to hit yes in quotations for my criteria. But the range that I want isn't how much they spend on food this time, it's how much they spend on travel. So you're going to click in cell E2, hold down Control and Shift and hit down until you have all the way to E501 highlighted. And there we go. And it comes out to $1,960.35 is the average amount that a homeowner spends on travel. What about for non-homeowners? Well, we'll use the same thing. We want the average if function one more time. Our first range is the variable that we have over here. For own home, we want the whole entire thing, so Control Shift down until we're all the way to B511. One more time. Our criteria, in this case, we're looking for non-homeowners, so I can put no in quotations. And then the average that we're trying to find here is how much is spent on travel. So I want the entirety of column E. Click on the first return in E2, Control Shift down until I'm all the way to E501, and I hit OK. And it comes out to $2,569.05. So we have the same trend right here. Non-homeowners tend to spend a lot more on travel than homeowners do, which again kind of makes sense. If you have your own house, you've made it into your own castle, you may spend more time at home. Whereas if you're living with someone else and people you're living with are making you nuts, you might want to get out of the house more often. Or if you're in a little tiny packed apartment building, maybe you want a little bit of space, so you travel. From a business perspective, looking at this information, we see that here, if you're in a community where a lot of people are homeowners, they tend to spend a lot less on other expenditures. Whereas if you're going to operate in a community where you have a bunch of renters, or you have information that tells you that there's a lot of people living in one building, people will have more discretionary income. You can probably expect a higher level of revenue if you are operating a grocery store, fast food chain, or resort in those areas.